What's up, everybody? I'm Scott.
I'm Jason.
And you're listening to Liquid Carnage.
Oh
What's
my
up,
gosh.
my friend? It's been a busy week since our last recorded.
I think it's hard because we try to pick for the listeners pre-production. We try to pick that gives us a little bit of time. So if something happens to the recording or something happens to the edit, or we decide, let's do something else, it gives us a couple days to, revisit or recreate it. But the downside of that is that hell of a lot of shit can happen in a week from when we record,
especially right now,
that just changes where it's like, oh my gosh, so obviously I preface that by saying, wow, a lot has happened since we last recorded.
Yeah. So last week we paid tribute to a close friend of ours and kind of reminisced and talked about life. Since then, I don't know if you've been on the interweb or read a newspaper, but there was the coup attempt at the national capital. So that was fun. Thank God it failed. But it's triggered a whole series of events that have just made America go, "What the fuck?"
I think that's a pretty good way to say it. It's definitely opened up a lot of questions for me. And this week, I've started writing in my journal again, and
your diary,
or my diary journal, however you want to call it.
Dear diary, I never thought this would happen to me. Go ahead.
Wow. But one of the things I noticed is that each day, as things unfolded and things kind of moved, it opened up another just general question about the events and what it means to us. And I think that as I was looking through there, it is a wake-up call that can be both positive and negative, but it's definitely a wake-up call to have us say, you know what, we really need to reassess what being an American is, what it means, because this kind of opened my eyes to a lot of questions.
I think this really showed to me what happened last week and everything that's going on is there really are two perceptions of American freedom. And there are two types of lines of thinking, and it's more so than ever that people are starting to think that if you're not with them, you're against them in lines of thinking. Does it make sense?
Talk a little bit more about that, because that's an interesting point.
Well, you talk about the people that just feed into what happened last week. Well, they call themselves the patriots that were storming the nation's capital to defend our freedoms and stop the deep state cabal of human trafficking and sex rings and all this stuff that President Trump is trying to overthrow. And then you have the other side that's like, what are you talking about? That's not a thing. You people are trying to stop something, a vote, an electoral certification that you don't have the proper grounds or understanding of even how to do so.
Interesting. There's a famous quote by Jefferson. I'm sure you've heard it. But basically, it's the tree of liberty must be refreshed with the blood of the tree of liberty from time to time must be refreshed with the blood of patriots and tyrants.
Yes, that was quoted last week numerous times on news sources by people storming the nation's capital.
But here's the thing. In this example, who are the patriots and who are the tyrants?
Well, I think that's the same argument that goes down to in every war, every side claims that God is on their side.
Okay, so in your opinion, who are the patriots and who are the tyrants?
In this case, I think the people storming the nation's capital were the tyrants. I think the patriots were the people guarding the electoral college ballots, defending the chambers of the nation's capital from people storming it, thinking that they're trying to take over and stop our government and our world because they've been told that they have that right and that they need to do what's best, not understanding what they think is best is not the reality of the rest of the world.
Well, and I mean, I tend to agree with you. However, it's one of those things where if you look at it from, I'm sorry, if you look at it from the other side, I can see the exact same argument, like you said, on the other side. I think the one thing that keeps going into my head, two things, is the people who are storming the Capitol do not make up what, and maybe I'm wrong for saying it or I'm naive, but I don't think they make up the mass majority of the people who support Trump.
I think they are a very small number of people, percentage of the support, but I think they're the most vocal support of his regime.
Well, okay. I think then the other part of it then is the people who did storm the Capitol, while they may be Trump supporters, I think that they're probably more of an anti-establishment that just happens to be fed by a candidate like Trump. But I think that I don't think they were doing this for political reasons or to save the country. I think they were doing it because they're mad, and their handling of their anger is more of a violent or physical altercation. I don't think that they're doing this for political reasons or, we need to save the country. It's hard for me to see that that's being their logic, is we're trying to save the country.
Well, I think that's literally what they think they were trying to do. Judging by the shirts they had made up, the coordination of the attacks. I mean, if you're storming the Capitol, in your mind, if you're trying to stop an electoral ballot from being cast, if you are trying to prohibit what's happening, that's going to be the law of our land, if you're not doing it because you think you're saving this country from itself, then you are doing it just because you embrace anarchy and you don't really believe that you're an American patriot.
Well, and I guess that's what I think. I mean, to me, just watching what we did, these weren't the people that were going to reestablish a new form of government, or these weren't the kind of people that were going to, make the changes that need to be made so that we have a better country moving forward.
But in their minds, they were. In their minds, they were taking the steps to make sure that those currently in power stay in power, because they've been led to believe that is the best course for America.
But with no. Okay, so let's say you accomplished it.
Okay.
What next? Like, what is your vision of what the America should be? If you were successful, I never got a feeling that they had any idea of, okay, we'll fix this, we'll get it going in the right direction.
Their idea of what looks good and what's next is exactly what's going on. What's been going on previous to last Wednesday, previous to the election. In their minds, they thought they were making America great. They thought that they were the ones keeping the law of the land and preventing people they've been, I don't want to say brainwashed, but convinced that have no good qualities about their beliefs, therefore they're terrible people. And that their beliefs are validated because they see eye to eye with the guy in charge who's loving on them, saying it's, thank you for what you're doing because you're supporting me and only me.
Right.
So I think that's where the problem comes down to. Their idea of a perfect America is because someone's stroking their ego because they're stroking someone else's ego, not what's best for mankind.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I think that what I didn't like about it was that whether you think you're doing a patriotic thing or not, you're still kind of violating laws and norms that we try to adhere to in a society. You're trying to break through the norms of our society. And how can we function if you don't have a societal norm? I mean, you can't function that way,
Well, that's what they're trying to fight against, is what they consider the societal norm. I mean, these are people that have quoted, make America great, back the blue, keep our country free. And what happens last week is they stormed the nation's capital. Someone beat a police officer to death with a flagpole and a fire extinguisher, and then they create chaos, breaking windows, stealing documents from our nation's capital. I mean, that's not freedom. That's not, what is that? That is you causing chaos, and I hope all those people spend a lifetime in jail.
Well, I mean, let's not forget that those people are also hardworking people. They pay taxes. Does that weigh into?
That's fine.
Does that weigh into our judgment of them that They are probably, I don't know any of them, but they work at jobs, they pay their taxes, they love their families. I mean, does that weigh into our judgment of them?
No, because that has no bearing on what they did. I mean, these people took time off to fly from all over the country to do this. They knew exactly what they were doing one way or the other. I mean, we are all raised to have, choice and reason, to understand what we do, to make those choices and do what we deem is right. And those people deemed what they thought was right was to storm that building at that time when a very important meeting that shifts the nation was going on.
Do you think that, as it's already happened, do you think that people who participated in that should be, when they get home, should be fired from their jobs?
You cut out for like 10 seconds.
I said, do you think that the people who participated in this should get fired from their jobs?
Yeah. I think so. I mean, there's photos of people walking around with their work ID badges on. I mean, we are literally in a pandemic where everyone's asking you to wear a face mask just so you can protect yourself, and half those people weren't even bothering to do that. So there's facial recognition. That's got to be one of the most technologically secure buildings in the world for having facial recognition, everything to be identifiable. And these people were walking around. So yeah, you know what? I think if you're willing to do that, you should be able to lose your job from that too, especially if you get arrested.
Some people have asked that the congressmen and senators that supported the Electoral College objection should have to lose their jobs. What do you think?
Well, I think the argument goes that the Democratic Party contested the elections in 2004 and 2016 out of, not because they were contesting the actual vote. I think it was just principle and practice for how some of the accounting was, because there has been a need for voting regulations and whatnot. I think what they're calling for, the major piece of what they're calling for here, is that those senators that agreed to it, the one from Missouri and the one from Texas, they're on video, they're on film, inciting the crowd. They're the ones publicly saying that this election was stolen and the people need to do something about it, or they're going to do something about it for the people. So we talk about Senator Hawley from Missouri, who up until last week was a prime candidate to be a presidential nominee in 2024 on the Republican side, which I think this just tanked him. He went all in on the MAGA side, and it's going to get him burned. He lost his book deal, and he's crying about the First Amendment, but I think what anyone in government should understand is that when you're working with a public company, like he was, a cancellation of a contract is not a violation of the First Amendment. There's other publications out there you can go, publish your book with.
Yeah, that's a really interesting kind of segue, because one of the things that has been thrown out a lot is obviously, the Trump campaign basically being just silenced. I mean, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Parler now even got shut down. Now we're talking about taking away someone's ability to speak to millions of people. And do these companies have the right, or have the legal right, to take away someone's megaphone and take away their First Amendment right?
If it's their megaphone, they can take away whatever they want to take away. That's fine. I mean, people are thinking that, the president can't say anything to anybody. He still has a press room. He still has the ability to walk out to that podium with the press pool at the White House and say whatever he wants to whoever he wants. I mean, there was a world before social media, and I think that's what that party right now is harping on, is that they're crying that they can't communicate with their base. They can. He can say whatever he wants to say to his base. He just has to walk over to the press room and say it at his disposal. He just won't do it. He hasn't done that in 2 months.
Well, even his messages to the rioters basically to stop were recorded. They weren't even live. They were recorded messages.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And maybe maybe that's the hard part, is that because I kind of agree with you. I mean, the freedom of speech is obviously something that we all want to protect. But we sign a user agreement when we get on to Facebook. We sign a user agreement when we get on to Twitter. And by signing that agreement, we give them the rights to make decisions on their platform about what they will and will not accept. So is that a violation of a First Amendment freedom of speech if you say, look, you agreed to our policies, and if you break our policies, then you no longer have the ability to use this platform?
No, I don't think that's a violation at all. I think it's people that are going to temper tantrum that don't understand the user agreements and don't have a full grasp of understanding of what goes on in the First Amendment. These people all have avenues to speak with. I mean, the problem is, though, they've burned their bridges with even their biggest allies in the media. And I think that's what's going unspoken about here, is that, in this case, it's the right side. That's the conservative side. So it would be the Fox Newses, and Rupert Murdoch's gone on record saying that he wants no part of this, and he's pulled back from a lot of his coverage on this too. So that leaves the really extreme right leaning groups, OAN, Newsmax, whatnot, to cover these people. And some of their stories are borderline conspiracy theory based. So that being said, if you go on there as your avenue of communication with your people, you're speaking to a very specific base. And if you're speaking to that base, and that base alone, you get what you pay for.
Do you think that this group realized before they started what the fallout from this decision and this emotionally charged reaction was going to do? Because I don't think Trump had any idea that within 48 hours of this thing that he would lose Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. He would start to lose, like he lost the company that handles all the campaign contributions for his website. He lost his golf course is losing a PGA championship in 2022. I mean, do you think that when this all started and the emotions were going, that they had any idea the amount of fallout that would come from this?
No, because in their mind, I think they thought they were right, and they thought that it's the idea of battle, that if you go in and we win, it's because God's on our side. And I think it's a very similar mindset here, is that they believe, that side believes that they're so right and so convincingly right that those corporations will have no choice but to stand with them because of the popularity their thoughts and opinions bring to the world.
There's also been stories, and I don't know if you've read them, but now some of these big companies that give money to PACs to be able to support certain candidates have now basically stopped giving money to the PACs. So this could have a fallout for financial reasons for these politicians as well. That could be game changing if it turns out to be as widespread as some of the big companies that have already announced that they're not doing it are going to do it.
Yeah. And you know what? And I think that's fine. I have no problem with that, because I think there should be consequences for stuff like this. I think if you don't have, if you can run around and say, my hair's on fire, you're a liar, nobody holds you accountable, then what are we doing here? What kind of world are we living in?
Well, and I mean, I think one of the things that I'll be interested to see what happens is it sure seems like this has this event with at least the Congress or the Senate, maybe not the House, but the Senate, has brought people together to say, look, we need to be better than this. We need, it's almost like they knew that there was stuff that could happen. They didn't realize it was going to happen. I think that people realize, there's inflammatory talk, and there's a lot of people that get fired up at his little speeches, but nothing bad has happened. I heard that a lot. Like, well, MAGA supporters, we're peaceful protesters. We're peaceful. And this,
not like those other BLM and what protesters, right?
I mean, I don't know. I still think that the majority of MAGA people who support Trump were not part of this thought process of let's go storm the Capitol. I really think that the majority of them went there to the Capitol to basically protest in front of the Capitol, and then a group of people, maybe a big group, don't get me wrong, but a group of people decided, you know what, we were here for an ulterior motive, and we're doing that ulterior motive. And I just don't think I don't think that the majority of MAGA supporters are out there saying, man, I am so glad that they did that. I am so glad they did that.
Well, I think what it does is it makes you lose credibility with your base, with the people that follow. But how many people, on those MAGA supporters were, if you're not with them, you're against them. You protesting or not, if you're not with them, you're against them. And they didn't want to hear the other side. If they didn't want to hear that, what the other side might look like if they were wrong, they didn't want to hear. That's not their style. That's not what they want to do. So, I may be wrong, but you're not right is the mentality at that point.
Right. What do you think that the future looks like for a candidate Trump?
Well, I think that depends. I honest to God think it depends on what happens. If he gets impeached, it's a moot point.
But I mean, the reality is he's probably not going to get impeached in time for it to matter for this, right? I mean,
no, they can do it after the fact. I've been doing research on that. They can impeach after the fact too. And what that does is that gets rid of his $200,000 a year pension. His ability to run for public office ever again. I mean, that does take measures to prevent him from being in power again.
Does the support of the Republican Party split where you're going to have the people that are diehard Trump fans and only Trump, and then there's going to be diehard Republicans, but not necessarily Trump, just Republicans?
I think what you're going to find on this is people that what's the best way to put this? I think we're going to find that it's either you're with them or you're not, and there's groups out there like the Lincoln Project that are watching, and those that vehemently support and back him still after all this. That will not be forgotten come re-election time. I think we're seeing, like you mentioned earlier, the PACs that do the donations. They're pulling their money from Republicans that are supporting this. Money ultimately speaks. Money talks. And if these people supporting them start losing their campaign donations and their financing, they're going to change their tune real quick. And we also, you can't forget that in a couple weeks, it's the Democrats have the majority in the Senate too, so they can still impeach after the fact, like I said, and make sure this doesn't happen again. But what precedent does that set? It probably sets a pretty big one. But all things considered, I think it's a risk most are willing to take.
Okay. What do you think the biggest fallout moving forward is going to be from all this stuff that happened last week?
I think oversight reform. I think you're going to see the spotlight on a lot of people that went from basically saying this is a rigged election and it has no power to changing their tune to we have to heal. We don't need to impeach because that hurts our healing process. And I think at this point, it's like rats jumping from a ship. They're just trying to save themselves.
One thing that's kind of an offshoot, but has been fascinating to me, and it's because I read a book about it, is I am amazed how powerful Facebook, Amazon, Google, Apple are really. I mean, those four companies basically shut down the speaking opportunities for a president of the United States with 88 million followers to basically say you have no speaking.
No, they took away their platforms from him. He still has the ability to speak those 88 million followers.
That's not. I mean, I'm not arguing that point. I'm saying that's four companies that had the power to shut him down for all intents purposes. They're saying now that Parler basically might go away because they have no Apple access, they have no Google access, and their web service has been shut down by Amazon. So in one fell swoop, that company is no longer in existence. That's what scares me when I think about what the outcome is going forward. It's to the realization that those four companies have that much power and influence in our daily lives, not only be used for, what Trump's been doing, or a lot of people have been using it, spreading whatever they want to spread and people like it and people, but also the fact that they can shut it down like that. And there's no recourse. Like Trump can't go and sue Twitter. He can't go after Facebook.
Yeah, but at the same point, so we'll take Parler, for example. Their agreement to be on the app stores for Google and Apple and whatever else, that's a business agreement too. So I think Apple and Google are well within their rights, and Amazon, to terminate their business agreement with them.
And that's fine. I guess what I'm saying is that those four companies can do that to anybody, right? Yeah. Anybody. Do you want four CEOs to have the power to basically affect anyone's business who uses those platforms, or affect anyone's ability to socialize or social network? Or
I think it comes down to, with that, is what is the basis of your company? What are you trying to do? And in this case, what those companies did is what they thought, in their opinion, I think was for the greater good. I mean, let's be real. What Parler is, it's a ultra conservative right wing social app for people to talk, and that's where the extremists went, and that's where extreme thoughts and discussions go on. And if they thought it was in their best interest to shut it down, with their business, with those four companies, that's well within their rights. That is well within their rights. That is not stopping Parler from finding another web service company, from finding another way to get their app out.
How are they? Okay. How do they get their app out there if the Apple Store and Google Store won't accept their app?
They just need a website.
and a company says, we're not going to let you do your website here.
Well, I mean, yeah, they want Amazon. That's fine. You can't tell me there's smaller web-based service companies.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess they could. I mean,
it's not impossible. It's just, I hear what you're saying, but at the same point, it's just because those businesses don't want to do business with them doesn't put them out of business. They just have to want it bad enough to go find those other companies that can help them. And right now, this is a radioactive topic for them.
Well, yeah, that I will say is probably true. I mean, I think the one thing that these companies, though, the four companies, are going to have to really seriously look at in the mirror is that if you look overseas, some of these dictators that are just like Trump have their web pages and their accounts open, and they're still spewing the same kind of stuff in their countries. Trump gets shut down here in the United States, but Duterte in the Philippines is still able to use his Facebook or his Twitter account. And this is a guy who basically, if you're a drug user, we're killing you.
Hey, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong either. I'm just giving you, when I look forward to what comes next or what does the future look like, I think that it started in 2016, and I think it's going to progress even further with these social media companies, whether it's regulation, whether it's taking away Section 230 so they can be sued for damages. Something is going to change within these companies because they've gotten to the point where they are so powerful now and affect so many people. I mean, they say Facebook has 2 billion users. So 30% of the world uses Facebook. That I could see the federal government looking at ways of controlling or breaking up or trying to stop these companies from even though I'm sure a lot of the people think, yes, you need to do Trump years ago. I'm glad you did it. I think when the dust settles, they're going to be looking and saying, do we really want four men to have this much power?
Well, let's be honest, though. Those 4 men are all major donors in some way, shape, or form to the government. So even if you take away their quote-unquote power, they still have power. I mean, this goes a lot deeper than people want to realize or people want to admit to.
Yep.
I mean, it's a donor base.
That's true.
But that's a different discussion for a different day. If you have any comments about this or any thoughts, did you know somebody that actually was dumb enough to storm the Capitol last week? We want to hear about their story. If you've heard their story, if they're not in jail, hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all at Liquid Carnage. If you want to buy that water buffalo hat from the Flintstones that one guy was wearing from Arizona and give it to our EP Tom for his birthday coming up, give him a tip on where to find it at liquid_EP on Instagram and Twitter.
Well, I will say that I guess in the whole scheme of things, it does seem like even though the disruption was there, that at least the order of our government and its functioning came back and restored what they needed to do. So I'm happy about that. I know a lot of countries that wouldn't have happened, right? Thank God we live in the United States, and I know we have issues, but we also have a good system that we can work through those issues and try to rebuild trust. Because right now the trust is just tattered. You know, we've had so many little chinks in trust that now have caused us to not trust each other or not trust what people say on the news or internet. And, you know, maybe this is the wake up call to bring us back.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Maybe it is. I mean, I don't know. It's an ever-changing world. Our discussion this whole thing could go south by the time we record next week. We could have a whole different discussion on something very similar.
You never know.
Yeah. But with that being said, we're running out of time. So Jason, go ahead and take us home.
Hey, thanks for listening, everyone. We really appreciate you. That was Scott. I am Jason. And as always, if you never know quite what to say, just have yourself some liquid carnage.